And so I'm happy to introduce Terry Ray, who's here with us today. She is our guest this morning. Terry is a longtime meditator, teacher, and also therapist. And she will tell us a lot more about her story and the topic that she's addressing now, which is working with physical and mental pain.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Giovannini. I don't know how long I'm supposed to be with the group, or if there's a particular format you'd like for me to follow. But I'm happy to be with you this morning.
Okay, well, you're here with us for about an hour, and you can save some time towards the end to allow for questions from people.
Okay.
And in terms of a format, you can certainly decide how you want to do that.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, I'm sorry that my name doesn't come up somehow or other. My name is not iPad, it's Terry Ray. And for some reason or other, I can't seem to change it. The devas of the internet or the Zoom are not letting me do that. But anyway, thank you, Giovannini. It's very lovely to be here with the Naropa people. I love it. I studied at Naropa and I taught at Naropa and been connected with Naropa from the get-go. As a matter of fact, I started practice with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche in 1974, and I've been teaching and practicing Vipassana ever since in classes and retreats and workshops. And I started Insight Meditation Community of Colorado with 2 other teachers. I wrote a book called Embodied Presence. And my other teacher was Charlotte Selver in sensory awareness, who was pretty very closely related to Alan Watts, but she was very much an embodied teacher. So I think I'd like to start just by sitting with you for a minute or two to get a sense of connection with you. So why don't you come into a sitting posture or arrangement of yourself that feels good. And I know that you practice a lot, but I'd like for us to start today just wherever we are. So however your mind is, whatever thoughts are here, and just to turn in and to notice how your mind is in this moment. And if you if there are any moods or emotions that are passing through, would you notice them? Any mind states, attitudes, judgments? And dropping down now another layer into the felt sense and what it feels like to be alive. What does it feel like to exist as mass and as weight? So we feel the touch of our clothes, perhaps air on our skin, our temperature. And just letting ourselves be receptive to whatever is right now. coming and going of thoughts, body sensations, whatever is here, the breath. Okay, so one thing that I didn't mention, and I'd like for you to kind of notice any judgments that come up that I tell you about myself, is that I am in a wheelchair. And I don't know how that is for you. I know it has an effect on most people, one way or another. And it's probably has an effect on you in some way. So I'd like to start with a question. If there's any of you who have lived with any illness or disability or chronic pain, just give me a little sign if you know that. Okay. So it's kind of intense, and I want to acknowledge you. I just want to acknowledge what you've been through, because there's very few people who haven't had to go through this or what you've gone through that can understand how we have to live. And it can be a very lonely experience. Does any of you wanted to say what your disability is or your pain is, or anything about it? Or what came up with you for you in your mind? What was the first thought when I said I'm in a wheelchair? You don't have to say. But often there's a picture or an image that comes up around it for people. Oh, too bad, or I have an aunt that's this, or whatever. There's some association that just about everyone has in one way. So the people that have disability are that are visible, have disabilities. There's something of feeling separate with them. And it's a real important thing for you to know when you get around people like us. So also physical pain. And in some ways, the wheelchair is a little bit easier than physical pain that nobody else can see. It's kind of like, I'm wearing my thing on the outside, whereas a lot of people, or even emotional pain, kind of have to deal with it themselves. And it's not like they're wearing it on the outside. So it's real important to get that piece of information from other people. But I first learned about physical pain when I was skiing. I had a skiing accident. Skiing and hiking were my life, really Boulder. And it snowed early one November, and Copper Mountain opened, and I was really excited. It was the first run of the season. And I ran, a little bit down the slopes, and then I stood to catch my breath. And then I had this amazing experience of being hit from behind by a 200-pound snowboarder who was out of control. And you can't see me, but I'm about 95 pounds. So there was this incredible blinding sensation and kind of swirling whiteness. And time lost, time just stopped completely. But in those first moments, I went to this tunnel that people talk about, and the experience was so raw and so vivid and completely consuming. And my back was broken. Two of the vertebrae were fractured pretty badly, and I was put in a body cast, and the doctor said, don't move. So, or if you do move, you'll be paralyzed for life. So for the next 6 months, as I was in this cast, the words paralyzed for life, paralyzed for life, paralyzed for life, paralyzed for life, that's all that went through my head. It's kind of like if you've ever had or know anyone that's had a cancer diagnosis, that just gets here. That's it. You know, cancer, cancer, paralyzed for life. And my mind was not my friend. My body was not my friend. It was horrible. And it really, really, really was painful. So running away was how I dealt with things. You know, it would have been the response of choice, but it had me. I couldn't move. It was always with me. This pain was, it was with me all the time. And the very last thing that I wanted to do was to meet it. The last thing. And I'd been in practice for a long time, but I lay in bed just endless hours, you know, doing everything I could to make it go away. Painkillers didn't do anything, and they had terrible side effects. The brace did not do anything. It was miserable, and it was really rough. And finally I said, okay, Terry, you've got these tools, you know, you've been practicing this stuff. And I had been practicing for 20 or 30 years at that time. So the buck stops here. It's time to start to walk your talk. So I knew what to do. But to practice at this level of intensity was an entirely different story. So mostly when pain would arise, and it still is my first reaction, is get me out of here. So, but I was literally trapped in this brace with sensations that were so strong and there was no escape. So I realized that the only choice I had was to either accept it or to try to avoid it, which was impossible. So I had to say, so be it. And I knew that I had to go deeper to enter into the sensation until the sensation itself transformed breathing, itself, and me. So many, many, many times I had to physically, psychically turn around, and instead of pulling away from the pain, very carefully and with as much heart as I could muster, I would turn into it. And I did this hundreds of times. And each time I did it, if I did it genuinely, I was really surprised. The pain would dissipate. It was bizarre. Where would it go? But it would just dissolve. It would come back. And time again, I had to, each time I turned in to surrender completely in a new way into sensation. I had to dissolve so that it became bigger than me, and I had to bow down to it. So as soon as the pain was not separate from me, it was not a problem. But there was always a little piece of me trying to push it away. But I couldn't do the same thing I did the last time. Somehow or other, I was asking to give up entirely to it, not because it would help, not because of anything, any reason, except because it was the truth of the moment. I had to die to it. And when I did this, when I really did it, my experience would change. So surrender is not a real positive word in the English language, you know. Once I was leading a retreat with a man, and he said, "What should we focus on? What should be the theme of the retreat?" And I said, "Surrender." And he made this face like he had just stepped in dog shit or something. It was like it was horrible for him. It was kind of like, you know, when you surrender in war, you lose. But when you surrender in practice, something else happens. So when I was in pain, you know, there would be tears and, you know, it would sometimes go away. And it was a maze, you know, how could it be? My back was the same, it was still broken. The only thing that changed was my relationship to the pain and having a willingness to be with it as it was. And I couldn't always do it. I couldn't do it because once I learned this trick, you know, this little manipulation that I could do, didn't work at all. But each time I really let go, something changed in my heart. And it had to do with turning with compassion into suffering. And in hindsight, which is always great, only hindsight, I'm very grateful. And what I found out is that the way I used to relate to pain, physical, and still do at times, and illness and any discomfort, it doesn't work very well at all. And there are ways in that we can use sickness and physical pain as powerful tools to transform us. And they are powerful. So, you know, the Buddha taught there's two kinds of suffering. There's a kind of suffering that leads to more suffering. And there's the kind of suffering that leads to the end of suffering. So usually, and it doesn't matter whether it's physical or emotional, if we're in pain, we try not to hurt, not to cry, not to feel angry, not to feel confused or jealous or helpless or fearful. We try hard not to feel the unpleasantness of whatever nasty condition we're experiencing. And this is the kind of suffering that leads to more suffering. It comes about through not feeling, through holding it away. So when this happens, our pain is covered up. It doesn't go away, it goes underground. And our muscles stay locked in defense against the pain and against all the thoughts and feelings that are associated with the pain long after the difficult event has passed. So eventually, then we first have to deal with what we've overlaid on top of the suffering. And then finally, with the original pain itself. And we add more misery to our suffering. So what happens when we numb ourselves to pain is at the same time, we deaden ourselves to life, to our vitality, our curiosity, our enthusiasm. And they all get dampened, diminish as well. So as I'm sure you know, we live in a very health and youth crazed culture. Tries to maintain the illusion that everything should be upbeat, pleasant, and picture perfect. The heavenly messengers are shameful failures and should be avoided. So the unconscious cultural assumption is that when one of these messengers come, sickness, old age, or death, that we've done something wrong, or we're defective, we're a personal failure. And this comes up for just about everybody because it's the culture that we live in. And it's unconscious, but pretty much we hold these things. And it's not just the community that does this to your client does it to herself. She takes it on, and it's really sad. It shows a real lack of compassion. And there's a truth that's being denied. They're called heavenly messengers because actually there's something, the kernel in each one of them is heavenly. It brings us freedom. So illness, old age, and death are realities that touch every one of us that we're lucky enough to live older. And we have to find some way in which they're not only acceptable, but they actually can enrich our lives. And it is possible. So in our world, illness is like a failure. But from a meditation perspective, we are the lucky ones. Every one of us is suffering. But the ones of us in wheelchairs are highly motivated, much more than average, to find out for ourselves, where is freedom? What does it mean? And we're forced to look inside and find the truth. And what we find is, yes, there is suffering, and there also is and can be an end to suffering. When I first got into the wheelchair, it was like, okay, what can I do? How can I find happiness? And so I used the main tool that I have, which was sitting practice. And so much joy began to come up. It's like, this is what life has given me. I didn't ask for it, but here we are. And from the practice itself, I found a deeper level of peace than I ever would have found. So as human beings, we exist in a body embodied. And our bodies bring us pleasure and joy and light. And they also torment us and torture us. And then ultimately, without a shadow of a doubt, it will betray us. That's my alarm going off to tell me I'm supposed to teach a class, but I'm not. Okay. Our bodies will betray us. So the ultimate statistic is that 10 out of 10 of us will die. There is no exception to this. There's a part of our mind that really doesn't want to get it. But there's no question. Isn't it amazing? And the most difficult assumption that I made because I was a hiker and a skier before I had an accident, is that if we're ill or have a disability, we can't have a wonderful life and be happy. And it's absolutely a myth. It's definitely possible. And it takes some work, it takes surrendering and dying, maybe dying 1,000 times to what's happening. Sometimes I felt like I was dying 1,000 times a day. It's not easy, but it is possible. So I recovered. I got back, I was healed by a healer, and I got back into hiking again. And then, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, I was getting in shape to lead a backpacking retreat on the coast of California. What could be better? Hiking, Pacific Ocean, meditating, teaching the Dharma. I loved it. So I got back, I completely forgot about the pain. And what happened was my legs started hurting and hurting and hurting when I would walk. And I went back into the wheelchair, and I assumed it was once again. I went to everyone, the Mayo Clinic, the healers, doctors, and this time it was actually more emotional than physical. But once again, you have to do this every single time with every single thing that you've got, emotional, physical. You have to turn in to what's happening. We have to mourn our losses. And then we have to get that this is it. And our job is to learn how to be in relationship to what's happening and to accept it. And then we can find out that our happiness doesn't have anything to do with pain, with wheelchairs, with disabilities, or anything else. There's a lovely quote by Stephen Vincent Benet that says, "Life is not lost by dying. Life is lost minute by minute, day by dragging day, in all the thousand small, uncaring ways. Uncaring toward ourselves and to others. Life is lost when we don't live it fully. We have to turn and feel compassion for every place our hearts are closed, and every place it's closed to ourselves. We have to send metta or maitri or loving kindness formally or informally, and turn into all the places of hurt and pain. So metta, maitri, kindness, they actually seep into us from the practice of them, and they touch these painful places like stones that haven't been touched for eons. So when we open again, these hard places that have been buried for 10 years or 20 years or 100,000 lifetimes ago, they feel themselves being touched. And lo and behold, the pain is still here. It hasn't gone away. It's just gone underground. And it's covered by knots in our shoulders, or tightness in the jaw, or tension in the gut. And when we contact them with kindness, it's amazing. They release naturally on their own, often with tears. And then our touchability, our compassion returns. Our hearts naturally quiver in response to suffering, to our own and to others. We have a lot of resistance because it takes a great deal of courage to touch the difficult places with kindness, because we have to touch, we know there's a part of us that knows it's going to have to touch the pain we originally shut off feeling from. And these are places that our hearts froze up. So what I ended up learning was that pain is very unpleasant sensation. That's all it is, though, is sensation. It may indicate a condition, and the condition may need to be dealt with, but usually not. And the implications of the pain and the pain itself are two very separate, different things. Touching the pain and thinking about the pain are entirely different. One leads to the end of suffering, and one leads to more suffering. So we get a headache or a small pain, and we think, this is happening to me. Oh no, I have to do this today, and this is happening to me today, as if it's something outside of ourselves. Hey, stop. This is me. This is in me, through me, my body. Nobody's doing it to me. This is not something that's happening to me. This is me happening. It's mine to face. From me to me. So pain, whether it's emotional or physical, is saying, pay attention to me. The pain of anger, the pain of loneliness, the pain of grief. Pay attention to me. Sometimes it feels like it's screaming, please pay attention to me. And it makes us pay attention. But we have to bring our attention so closely, really intimately with it. We have to pay attention as if our whole life, as if our incarnation were about this. This is why we're here. We get close to it. We get intimate with it. We become it. And we dissolve into it. We let it win. And in the letting it win, it transforms us. It changes who we are. Plus, the tool that we develop is using the sensations to move towards freedom. So sometimes I'll hear myself when there's a pain, I'm saying, no, please stop, go away, pain, go away. So we can hear ourselves doing this. And when I find myself doing it, I change the words that I use to, may I find the strength to meet this situation. So the prayer, instead of go away, becomes, help me find the stamina or the potency to meet what's happening now. And may this pain serve the awakening of my heart and mind. So whatever contraction is around this is a felt sense that needs to be more conscious. So often, instead of the headache, there's a feeling of aversion that's pushing it away. And once we feel this aversion, and clearly without judgment, it falls away, and there is the pain of the headache. It heals itself. It dissolves itself. So this does not mean you should be a martyr. If the pain's intense, if it's up above a 6 or a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10, and you can't open to it, do whatever you can do to feel better. It's not skillful, it's not loving, and it's not kind to endure it. Don't just put up with it. Suffering's a call for compassion, not for self-judgment. That's a trap that a lot of people get caught in. And suffering needlessly is inappropriate. Go to doctors, go to healers, go to therapists, take a pill, do herbs, do treatments, watch TV, do whatever you can do that helps. But often there's nothing that will help you. And you find yourself in the middle of the night, wrestling with these dark angels. It just may be that the trick is to turn into it. And the way out first involves going into it. And the wisdom in our body sensations has a ticket. It's a ticket that's unique to us and to this moment. But most importantly, be kind to yourself. So ask yourself the question, given all the current information I have and the tools and skills that I have, what's the most loving thing I can do for myself in this moment? And one of them is to surrender to the pain, to touch the hurt, to learn to turn into it, to practice again and again with the confusion and the pain, and meet the depth of what's been given to us. My teacher, Charlotte Selver, she used to say, I never said it was going to be easy. And I know right now it's not. But when we divorce ourselves from our pain, we divorce ourselves from life and reality. And when we enter into and touch the pain, it's a timeless moment. There's no suffering. So it's possible to be completely free and even happy with pain. So we all get sick, sickness is one of the heavenly messengers. Headaches, colds, sinus infections, and we say, okay, now that's enough. Do they care, the heavenly messengers? No, they party. They invite their friends, frustration, despair, depression to the party. They make themselves at home in our bodies and they stay as long as they want. Our only choice is whether we're gracious hosts or not. So the heavenly messengers don't seem that heavenly, but they call us to pay attention. They're reminders. They call us to wake up and remember what we've forgotten. We have forgotten that we're just visitors here. These bodies aren't supposed to stay young forever, in spite of the fantasies television is trying to make us believe. And our birthright was never perfect health, no matter how much yoga we do or how many supplements we take. And death is coming, regardless of how much we refuse to think about it. The messengers just remind us we are here on borrowed time. And they invite us to come back. Don't stay lost. Come back to this moment. That's all we really have. And remember what matters. Remember what's important. Remember what you value. Align with your own truth. Not the truth that someone else told you you should have, your truth, and align with your heart. So when we get to be adults, we're usually alienated from our bodies and our inner nature. We've forgotten who we are underneath these facades we put on. And we see children and we think, how adorable, how alive. And we should be thinking, what happened to me? How am I disenlivening myself? How do I disenliven myself? I remember when I was 6 years old and I ran down the stairs and I saw these grown-ups sitting on the porch. And they were more like pictures of people than people. You know, no one was in their body. Certainly no one was having fun. They were just like these cardboard cutouts with their mouths moving. And I swore to my sister Carol then, who was 4 years old, that I wasn't going to do it. I was never going to grow up because it wasn't any fun. Where's the fun in your life? So when we have illness and pain or old age, we may need to slow down. We may need to get in touch with our own rhythms and not to buy into this sense of crazy urgency that's fueled by craving and fear in our driven culture. We have to learn acceptance. And we need to learn to work with certain pitfalls. The pitfall of anger, bitterness, depression, despair, and loss. Loss is big. So I got to know personally that there were lies underneath depression and despair, and lies that hold them in place, such as the lie we tell ourselves it's hopeless. Who knows? Or I'm not worthy. What does that mean? Or I can't possibly be happy. These are lies that hold depression and despair in place. And without these lies, they don't survive. There's a whole lot that can come out of our investigation. There's pieces of information and teachings that we can't get anywhere else but from what's happening in the moment. And we need to learn a lot about kindness. And we need to learn how to unhook our minds. You know, the hook. I know you know the hook. And about letting go of control. That's a big one. So I'll go just a little longer. It's almost like being in a monastery when you're ill. And it's also preparation for dying. It's a practice of looking at fear. Because your ego is afraid of illness and death. We have to grieve what we've lost. And until we do that, we can't move into complete acceptance and peace. When we're ill, life slows down, we're isolated. But we investigate closely, wisdom and kindness grow. And I led a lot of workshops for people with disability and chronic illness. And one of the biggest problems is not the illness, but we abandon ourselves. And we can learn to use the illness to reconnect with ourselves and connect with our hearts and where we are now. And so the salvation from disability and illness is the same as the salvation anytime. It's the heart connection to the present moment. We're amazingly tender and vulnerable. We're delicate like the wings of a butterfly. But it takes a lot of strength and courage, the courage of a warrior to turn into the pain and meet it and touch it in order to feel our own hearts. So when we feel pain, we can take it in with the wish that all beings be free of pain. When we feel pleasure, we can send it out to others. And in this way, our personal problems become a stepping stone for understanding the suffering and happiness of all beings. So meditation sharpens our perception, and we become more subtle and more sensitive. And as we sit, awareness becomes clearer, and we can begin to notice that our story is recreated in every moment and arises out of space. And the space is here all the time. Just like the stars are here in the daytime, but we don't see them. But it's very difficult to notice or experience anything of our original nature until our thoughts begin to settle down. So our peace and our deepest heartfelt understanding and goodness are here all the time, just waiting for us to get with it. So I studied with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and he was teaching one day, and he had his blackboard, and he drew a picture, just a little V on the board, and he says, "What is it?" Everyone says, "What is it?" So finally someone got, "It's a bird." And it was a bird. "It's a bird." And he just laughed and laughed. And he said, "No, it's the sky with a bird in it." That's what we are. The sky with a bird in it. So may we all be happy even in sickness, illness, old age, and in death. I guess I will end here and see if you have any questions or comments that you are something against what I said is fine too. Anything that comes up for you that you would like to share with us or each other, your Sangha. You can just raise your hand or you can put a little hand reaction up, whatever it needs. Oh, yes, JR. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, it's Joel. I need to change that. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much. I had, gosh, I feel like that was one of the the most amazing things I've heard since I've been in Europa. I was just relating with a lot to that. I first wanted to just say answer your first question. You asked what was your reaction when you said you're in a wheelchair. It was interesting. It was almost dismissive at first, and I feel like a little bit of shame saying that, but for some reason there was just this like, oh, she's in a wheelchair, like just a very subtle, maybe I don't need to listen or something. So like there was that. I don't want to get into comparing, but I struggle with this back pain that makes it, right now it's fine. Most of the time it's fine, but I have to be careful of everything I do. I have to be careful about what buildings I go into, because opening a heavy door will activate this back pain that I'll be sitting with for the rest of the day, or if I pick something up, or if I move a chair or meditation cushion. So there's that. And some part of my life, I can get into those lies that you were talking about, that like, oh, I'm going to be struggling with this forever. This means that I can't ever go backpacking again. This means that I can't ever go climbing again. This means I basically can't be happy if I can't do those things. So, and I've heard basically what you've been teaching numerous times, but the way that you're putting it somehow really resonated in a very, very different way. And just like knowing that like that pain is one, it's inevitable for all of us, and two, that is the second type of suffering that can lead to the end of suffering, and that I can view it as a heavenly messenger. Just the message for me was unbelievable
Oh, wonderful.
in a lot of ways. Thank you so much.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Mhm.
When you said that about the wheelchair being dismissive, thank you. I mean, that's so beautiful because everybody's got something, and it's so much better I don't have any problem at all when people are disgusted by the wheelchair or just, preferably I prefer the truth than they're covering it up. But one thing that came up for me, I'm actually in a motorized wheelchair now that's a little higher, but when I was in a push wheelchair with the big wheels, being lower than other people made a huge difference. Somehow or other, my height. So if you're with a client that's in a wheelchair, make sure that you're on their level. It's like that's a real important thing. And with the back pain, one of the things about pain too is as soon as we feel it, we go, there's that pain again, as if it's the same as the old pain. And it's not. I mean, you definitely have to take care of yourself, certainly, and be careful about what you do, and your limitations. But when the pain comes up, it comes new each
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
And
that's right. It's
we
not the
don't get
same.
it. We don't get it. It's like, oh, here, it's like the mind just wants it to be that old pain.
Yeah, that's so true. That's the samsara. I'm like here, and then it keeps me in the same cycle instead
Yes.
of viewing it as, oh, this is impermanent. It's a different thing each time.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That
Right
somehow is
now,
very helpful too.
this is it.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but this is it in this moment. And actually, I wasn't even paying attention to being present until this came. And now I have to really pay close attention. What is this? What is it? And really get curious about, what is this? Is it? And often I found there's so many different layers of it. My pain in my legs can be in my jaw. And it's like, and then it starts to unravel, and it unravels itself until it gets to the nub. So really get curious about it. And it's hard to get curious. All your energy, your focus, and your attention is trying to make it go away. But it's not the same pain. It's this pain, this moment, every time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was great.
Good, good. Yeah. And that's maybe why we were born this whole life. And we're going to avoid it each time, or fall into depression about it, and the lie that says it's going to be this way forever. Who knows? Or it doesn't even say the pain's going to be this way forever. The lie says I am going to be miserable forever with this. We have no idea. And then also for me, it goes into the I'm not good enoughs. Who knows? What does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. So,
I love this. Thank you so much. I love this notion of surrendering to transform or surrendering to win. I notice that there's a lot of resistance sometimes within me to that or others. Is there like a pithy way you respond to someone when they put up resistance around surrender? A
yeah,
pithy, quick way?
yeah. There is a little thing, although it has to really be done new each time. But if it's possible to feel physically how you're holding on and accept that holding on, because we are holding on in some way, and there also is a physical component, although maybe we can't connect with it, but we feel how we're holding, And it's easier for me physically than it is mentally. So I don't want to let go. You know, my ego it wants to win and it's not going to, but it does still want that. So I can feel the wanting not to let go. And that is the holding. And when we feel that, anything that we can feel is in the way, it starts to release itself. Because that is the basic goodness of the unfolding of this whole path. It's like the truth, that anything that's against the truth can't hold up in the light of awareness. So when we bring a pure, but it's so tricky because there's this little wish in it for it to let go. And it has to be without wish. We have to admire the holding. My God, isn't this amazing how I'm constricted? Isn't it amazing how I'm grasping onto this? And we have to really admire the power of I think it's Shenpa. I don't know if you know Shenpa. The power of the grip. It's like, oh my God, whoa, look at how tight I'm holding. It really doesn't want to let go, does it? And if I hold it that way and don't want to let it go for, I don't know, it won't last for 20 minutes, but even 5 minutes or 2 minutes, it's like it starts to release itself. We don't do it. We can't do it. It's outside of our control. And all we may learn is another little manipulation, which it may work once, but it also makes us, it strengthens the ego as opposed to loosens it. So don't try to control letting go of control. It's just a whole nother layer. Admire the control. Whoa, is this a cool thing or not? Look at how I'm made. Look at how this happens in me. Man, it's just desperate. Holding on for dear life here. Okay, look at you. And you can't do it for that long. It releases itself. Well, I wish I could get to know all of you. I really love looking at you, and I'll bet you're a really great group. Neat. Neat to see you on your paths to freedom. Well, I think it's time.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Terry. I thank you on behalf of our whole group. And your visits to us are always so powerful. They're just a genuine transmission of your wisdom and your heart.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Giovannini.
So let's bow to conclude this and wish you well. And then everyone go to lunch and go back to the small groups. Let's bow to end for now. Bye, Terry. Thank you.
Blessings to all of you on your journey.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Terry. Thank you.